what will it cost us, deadweight loss, to tax labor a little more? I would give you an answer like that. I think others might tell you 10. I think you could find people that would get it higher than that. But some number like that. So you have to remember, when you go to get money by taxation, when you get $100 by taxation, it costs you on the order of $120 to do that. So when you go to subsidize your sewage treatment plant, and you're going to do it with taxes, remember your money isn't free. Your money costs 1.2 roughly times what you think. I would still say it's probably worth it. The last advantage that taxes have is pretty subtle. Here I've drawn two marginal cost of abatement curves. The top one is the original marginal cost of abatement curve. The bottom one is the marginal cost of abatement after we've invented something new. So I want to know, what are the benefits of inventing something new, a cheaper way of abating? We could start out at our original 6.7 million tons abated, which would be a standard, and ask, well, what's that worth? Well, I can answer that. The dark area plus the light area are the area under the original marginal cost of abatement curve. That's the cost of abating. The light area is the area under the new one. That's the cost of abating under a new, much better technology. And so the difference between the two areas is what this invention's worth. It's how much money the invention saved. So if you had a standard, indeed, that's what you get. What happens if instead we'd chosen a price of 93 cents a pound? Well, abatement got cheaper. They would do more of it. Instead of abating 6.7, the way I've drawn it, they'd abate 7.4. And so they get a little bit of additional benefit. Yeah? Well, how much additional benefit do they get? Well, let's look at it. So the area under the marginal cost of abatement curve out from 6.7, that's the cost of the additional abatement. The benefits are supposedly whatever the price of abatement are. So they're the entire rectangle, and the difference between the two is a little black triangle. So in a price-driven system, innovation is worth a little more. And I do believe what I've drawn here is more or less the right idea. Both of them get this big hunk. One of them gets this little tiny additional triangle. So the two are pretty close the way I've drawn it. I think that's reality. In theory, of course, the price scheme is better, right? Because it picks up the additional black triangle and you get it for free. So that's the story with incentive to innovate and why it is that a price scheme gives you a little more incentive, not a lot more. And here we have a comparison of MBI approaches. And I pretty much said this all. And you'll pardon me for not saying it again. Is that all right? Yes, I've been pardoned. I'd like to go back to the Clean Water Act, having finished that for the moment. Did we talk about it? I just don't remember. I know I talked about the Clean Air Act. Did I get the Clean Water Act in before? Yes, no? No. Okay. So the Clean Water Act is more of a standard piece of legislation in that it starts out with some goals that are pretty unrealistic. And the unrealistic goal is no emission to water. So no industrial thing at all. No sewer will emit anything to water. That's not going to happen. That gives you the title of the major program, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which is the permit system. So if you build something that discharges the water, you have to get a permit from US EPA, and those permits are handed out based upon a technology-based effluent standard. So that's piece one of the act. There's research papers out there that fundamentally document there are too many permits. And the story goes roughly like this. You build a paper mill. The paper mill has a capacity, so many million tons of paper a year. Each million tons of paper, using best available technology, have so many pounds of pollutant per year to water. So what they do is they take the size of the plant, they multiply it by the amount of pollution per output, and give you that many permits. The reason why it's not binding is that paper plants only run at capacity a very small amount of the time. They're almost always below capacity, and so they're almost always not using up all their permits. And so the system really doesn't force much on them. That's the story that's told. There are too many permits. The other side of it is a real implementation problem. In the Clean Air Act, it's kind of top down. The guys in the center say, this many parts per million carbon monoxide in your air, you, Mr. State, make it so. And if you don't make it so, we'll write a plan to make it so, right? So the states either write the plan themselves, which is probably better for them, or let the feds write it, but there's no way out. The Clean Water Act has another section that looks like that, but it doesn't really work. The reason why is the states have to move first. They have to look at a piece of water, like the main stem of the Missouri River, and they have to define how clean they want it to be. And that's written in terms of, and I don't have them up, it's stuff like fishable, boatable, swimmable, drinkable. Right? I think fishable, boatable are one, swimmable and drinkable are above it, but that's the way they state it. But until a state looks at that piece of water and says, thou shalt become swimmable, nothing happens. About 5 years ago, when I wrote the book, I looked in Montana to see what pieces of water had been designated as what. And I found that there were a number of minor streams on national forests that had designations, and that all of the bigger streams did not. I also knew that the main stem of the Missouri is polluted in Montana. Are there people in Montana? Not to notice, right? Are there cows in Montana? Oh, yes. And is there wheat in Montana? Oh, yes. And somehow they got enough nitrogen in the Missouri River all the way up at Great Falls so that you can't drink the river. And you can't purify it, you'll discover, because your hand purifiers do not take out the nitrogen. So you get nitrates in the water, you cannot get it out. As a result, our 4-day canoe trip had 1 gallon of water per person per day. And that's a lot of water going down the river. That was the majority of our weight when we started out, was fresh water to make it, 4 or 5 days from wherever we put in down to where the Judith River comes in. That's how polluted the thing was. So, no, they decided not to do anything. And all they had to do to frustrate that part of the Clean Water Act was nothing. So that's the problem with the Clean Water Act. Is it beginning to be different? Yeah, it's beginning to be different. It's beginning to be that the courts have found ways to make the states do a little bit. But fundamentally, the Clean Water Act does not do what you would think it would do. If you had traded it out for the Clean Air Act, and had a national standard, ambient standard, and had the states have to find a way to make the ambient standard come true, then you would not be floating down the river and see a fence along the river and see 400 cows on the wrong side of the fence in the river. Right? Because the state of Montana would have to make it so, not the state of Montana would have to just throw up its hands and do what it wanted. So that's the story. I've talked about the other. Are we going to do that today? No, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to do chapter 13 next time, and there's not much to say. There'll be the same diagram, and I'll play with it. But